Good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing? Wow. Let's, I know it's the third day of the festival, but I was hoping for more energy than that. Do you know what I mean? Everybody good? Yeah. Woo! Yeah, is the correct response. Okay, so I hope you're all having a wonderful Future Film Festival day. It's already been incredibly inspiring. I think I've said it already, but literally, like, the inspiration is raining down like dollar bills at a strip club. No, it's maybe not the right analogy. Anyway, you know what? There's a lot of inspiration and it's coming thick and fast. And we're here to kind of get some more of that now. This is a wonderful session because we've had the opportunity to team up with our friends at Latimer to kind of organize this session. All right, it's all about being creatively commercial. So being creative and not starving to death, which is something I think we can all get behind. Okay, so look, what I'm going to do is I am going to hand you over to Louise from Latimer, and she is going to introduce our panel. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Future Film Festival. Welcome to Creatively Commercial.
To you about like their journeys. We've got Rob here.
Hello.
Rob Jones.
Hello. Is that right?
Yeah, you can share mine.
Nice to see you.
Easy.
This one, yeah.
Tando Brown,
Hi.
founder of Out Since Tuesday. Carly, who's the head of partnerships at Latimer, and then we've got Purcell Ascot and Jovan Wade from Wall of Comedy. Wall of Comedy.
Hello. Hey guys.
So I'm going to kind of keep my chit chat to a minimum and let the guys kind of introduce themselves and what they kind of do. Yeah.
Yo, hey, I'm Rob Jones. I've recently sort of become a freelance photographer. I've got a background in marketing, where I studied at university. Amongst sort of running events and being involved in sort of underground music. And then, yeah, my passion for sort of music and events led me to shooting them. And now, yeah, here I am doing photography as my living, which is amazing.
I'm Tando Brown. I run a production company called Out Since Tuesday. I'm actually a director and producer, but we mostly work on short films, promos, documentaries that leak over into like broadcast and stuff like that too. Yeah.
I'm Carly. I'm the partnerships director at Latimer. At Latimer, we work with a lot of brand partners, and then we team up with a lot of talented creators, essentially in the youth space, and we kind of bring those people together to give people creative opportunities. So whether it's creating content for social or broadcast or whatever it might be, the young people that we work with kind of get a stake in what the brands do, because ultimately the brands are trying to reach a youth audience, but they're not the youth themselves. So that's why we work with a lot of youth communities that we create for brand partners.
Hey guys, I'm Purcell Ascot.
And I'm Jovan Wade. And together we are both actors at Trade and also run a company called The Wall of Comedy, which is a comedy company, a comedy platform essentially, in which we create original content. We also share licensed content, and we've recently opened out to just being a lifestyle platform which incorporates not just comedy but also music, fitness, food, inspiration, and the aim is to take over the world.
So yeah, I've got some examples of everyone here on the panel's work, so we can hear from them a little bit more in depth. But I kind of think, yeah, I had some key questions to ask. I think what it would be great to know from each of you is kind of, well, actually, do you know what? Let's see the content first, and then I'll ask questions after. So the first person we've got is Tando. We've got PCO content here. Oh? No, we've got Latimer content.
That's not mine.
Latimer's
That's
content.
not mine.
Carly,
Yes.
would you like to talk us through the Voxy campaign that we're working on at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So about a year ago, Vodafone decided that they wanted to launch a new youth product, which they named Voxy. And ultimately, the product was endless social data for under 25, so an incredible product. And I think they kind of knew, as Vodafone, that they probably weren't necessarily best placed to be the ones that created the content for this under 25 audience. So in their own words, what they decided to do was get out of the way, and essentially they wanted young creatives from all over the country to power that content that you just saw to live on social. So what Latimer did is we recruited around 100 young creatives, of which Rob is one of those creatives.
Yeah, so this is how it ties in. It wasn't just
it wasn't just a sales
but
pitch.
yeah, this is how we kind of work with creatives like Rob.
Yeah, and essentially they power all of Voxy's social media content. So when we've kind of run the campaign and taken a step back and looked at the results, what we saw was that the engagement from their, the audience they were trying to reach smashed all of the benchmarks in terms of, comparing it to maybe what an advertiser would just do themselves, because essentially the content that the community made was spot on for the target audience. So it was capturing people, in their social feeds, making them stop and go, wow, that is cool. And, there were lots of comments and engagements on social that meant that people like Rob were getting, exposure to a whole new audience, and that was all thanks to Voxy. So a really incredible project. And, what we do at Latimer is we try and work with brands who genuinely want to, bring youth into what they do and not just say it. And I think Voxy is a really, really strong example of that. So we're really proud of that campaign.
I think at this point it'd be good to find out from you, Rob, on a project like Voxy, what was appealing about it to you, and why did you decide that as a freelancer you wanted to get involved?
Yeah, I think as Carly just said, the whole sort of purpose of the project is to give creatives like myself and everyone else on the collective just like the full creative reign to do what we usually do on a daily basis, but to like have that platform that can reach like the whole sort of country and worldwide. Which by yourselves and without Voxy you would never have got. So yeah, that was like one of the biggest sort of appeals to me when applying. And I think meeting, because there was 50 of us and now there's 100 on the collective with Voxy, and just being able to given like the opportunity to work with, speak to, get what's the word, feedback from, with that whole community is just amazing. And yeah, I think because we're creating content which we we're creating content sort of like for our friends which they will like, because it's all a sort of 18 to 25 demographic. Yeah, it's been an awesome opportunity, and yeah, sort of like long may it continue really. I think it's the first time that a brand has like properly worked with young creatives as well, which is pretty special. And I think, as you saw in the video, like the sort of the outcome's been really good. So yeah,
cool.
Big up.
So while we're on you, I've got some other examples of your recent work. So do you want to talk us through this particular campaign?
So yeah, this was again just a sort of freelance job that I got. I've recently, I think you must have already seen now, these 3D or wiggle GIFs. They're popping up all over Instagram and social media now.
Sorry.
It's alright. I think the music producer Muramasa sort of began using them a year or so back. But yeah, it's basically a 3D film camera, and I was asked to shoot at Men's London Fashion Week last month. And I thought, why not just take it down with me? It's something new, well, relatively new still, and the results are sort of, if you just click on one of them, yeah, it just makes it sort of look 3D. We'll get there. So yeah, is that it?
Yeah.
But yeah, you sort of get the idea. But again, it's just another way of sort of standing out from a massively saturated sort of market, in terms of when you get your phone out and you look at Instagram, you're just inundated by like images and videos, whereas if you sort of see one of those, I think it really stands out. Again, that's just another sort of way for me to try and engage with my audience, and yeah, something new I guess that people quite like seeing.
Cool.
But yeah, I got really good feedback, and I'm sort of taking my 3D camera with me wherever I go now.
Is this is this your first time doing working for like a brand at Fashion Week? And how easy or difficult did you find it getting into that space?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully, well, my friend was actually one of the models for this brand Labrum, and yeah, he invited me down. He knew I was sort of freelance and looking to get on board with new opportunities and meet new people. Yeah. This is actually my first time experience in sort of like fashion photography, if you want to call it that. But yeah, it was wicked. Yeah, it went really well. Again, yeah, I think the photos sort of speak for themselves, and yeah, it was a good experience.
Nice.
Really good experience.
Alright, cool. So we'll move on to you, Tando, next. As soon as your video kept jumping up.
Still going.
Yeah.
Life is what you make it. Sounds so simple, yet it turns out to be our biggest challenge. Passion, dreams, intention, action. Day by day, we create the world around us, making a statement. The world is our skate park. The challenge is really just believing it. Once you break out of this cycle, it's when you actually get to start living. Skateboarding is not a sport. It's a lifestyle, a movement, a way to do life. It changes the way you see the world around you. Everywhere you go, there's potential art to be made because skateboarding is art. From the clothes, the music, and the way of life we choose, we create our own style of movement. See, 10 people can do the same trick, yet they would all look different and unique. You will learn instant manifestation. It's the art of seeing something in your head and then making it happen in the flesh, the same way you picture it. Here in LA, it almost seems like a huge percentage of the architects were at some point skaters. We're spoiled with spots, and every day new buildings rise with endless amounts of canvas for us to create and evolve the art that is skateboarding.
On Instagram.
You got charms and lucky you are. I think I'm lucky we are. I think we higher than we been with all that pussy we are. I'm on those vibes, on those waves they ain't never seen before. Cause I just high with this pain like we never seen these hoes and we just moving.
When you understand, you're gonna learn to define. You give circumstances your own meaning, giving you the control of your vibe, a chance to react in love. Ultimately, we become what we think about the most. We're all just skaters. What do you think about it?
Oh. Well done, brilliant. Well done.
Yeah, it's dope.
So, do you want to talk to us a little bit kind of about how that piece of work came about? Talk to us about it.
So, basically, we do like a lot of brand-based stuff. But basically, I used to live in Toronto for a little bit, and in New York for a little while. My sister lived in Toronto, so I was out there for a while. We got to meet a lot of people, and we met loads of musicians, and that's how we linked. They wanted to link themselves to New Balance, so the musicians were like, okay, let's do some New Balance stuff. So then I got a call from my guys from New York that were like, we'd love you to handle the project. So I was running the visuals for this whole campaign. So they were bringing out a shoe called the 009, and they asked me to run all the visuals for this whole campaign. So we did a world tour. So we did LA, South Korea, New York, Berlin, and Paris and London. And it was like for 2 months of just straight shooting, and then we put on these events and all that kind of stuff as a company. So as a company, we're like a full service production company, which means we're able to do graphics, photography, film, motion graphics too, and all that kind of stuff, which meant we were able to kind of own the project. It was literally just about 10 of us going from like city to city around the world, and to film. So this film though wasn't actually part of the campaign. We actually, while we were in LA, we ended up meeting a load of people, and I don't skate myself, but I love the lifestyle, and I know that New Balance Skate wanted to bolster their marketing campaign. So I got in touch with them, and I was like, well, if I planned the entire thing, would I be able to tag it onto the back of this campaign? And they were like, well, yeah, if you could plan it. So it took me about a few days, and then got all these skaters together, gave them the merch from the tour, and then we shot this film out in LA, and they ended up loving it so much that they rolled it out as a piece of content. So this was actually a happy accident. But the tour itself was about this shoe, which was like a really, really fun tour. But that's how this project happened. I find that often you find little gaps in the market for some of these brands, because you see something that they don't, because they're coming to you in the first place, because you have an insight into a world that they don't really know about. So I think the main thing was actually finding something that they don't know about, and then creating something out of it, and then supply and demand, I suppose. You know. But yeah.
And now we have old school Latimer friends, Purcell and Jovan. So do you want to talk us through your journey? Just give me a cue when you want me to skip.
Cool. Yeah. Sure thing. Yeah.
So what we wanted to do is we wanted to break down our journey into the life cycle of a plant, because we feel like a plant is a very simple way that you can kind of navigate yourself through life and through a journey. So essentially, this is the seed. So you
can see that skinny boy on the left. That's me. Change now.
So 8 years ago now, we're now 24 years old. When we were 16, we decided that, you know what, we want to kind of take what we love, which is acting, and, you know, go the full mile of trying to pursue an acting career. So we both went to the Brit School. We didn't know each other, just kind of came across each other's paths, and we ended up clicking. I was like, who's this kid? And he was like, who's that kid? And yeah, eventually we got to the point where we had been cast in a couple of projects that we were doing at our school. And this is one of them, which is our Shakespeare show, which was Much Ado About Nothing. I played Don Pedro, and Pazzi played Claudio. And through just working together on that show, we realized, you know what, like, we have such great chemistry and we want to work together. Let's do something. So after kind of doing a few other projects, we went on to do something called Common Ground, and we realized that, you know what, like, we can see a partnership and see ourselves working together. When it got to the point where we were, you know, leaving school, we said to ourselves, look, we don't want to go into, you know, your traditional drama school like our RADA, etc., etc. What we want to do is be able to just create our own opportunities. So we said, okay, let's come together and let's try and create a show. So we was working with a few guys within our school who were, you know, as passionate, well, we thought they was as passionate about making content as we were. were, and we were inspired by one of our friends who already made something, and it got to the point where they just weren't on the same wave as us, and we kind of said, okay, let's just kind of put that to the side and let's come together and let's create something. Come about 6 months later, we did a variety showcase where we met our third co-star, D. Carte, in which we came together and we saw the opportunity to create a series which was called Man on the Wall, which essentially was the Sprout. Cue.
Yeah.
Straight away, I was like.
Yeah, so we created Man on the Wall because we were getting auditions left, right and centre that was the same sort of typical roles. So we was like trying to, we had auditions to play Thuggy number 1, Thuggy number 2 and Thuggy number 3, and we just thought, you know what, this is a joke. And again, what Javan was saying is like we really wanted to create YouTube content as well, and so we just felt like there was nothing on TV that we were into, and this is 8 years ago, you know. And I still kind of hope that is changing, but you know, for a lot of us, a certain demographic, we can't tap into TV, and yeah, so we thought about how about we create a show that, you know, we enjoy watching, and a show that is quite similar in references to like Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and in terms of like the theme tune. So when we was creating the show, we were thinking about just the whole brand. You know, we wasn't just creating a web series just for the sake of it. We knew that we was going to take this show to TV, so we thought, what can we do within our power to create a show that's going to be like TV? So at the time, me and Javan were doing some acting jobs. So I was doing a show called Wizard vs Aliens on CBBC. Javan was doing some stuff on BBC with Casualty, and we would take like what we learnt from the set and we would apply that to what we were doing for Mandem. And then 4 months in, our first episode we released December 2011, and overnight we achieved about 60,000 views, I think it was. And then after 3-4 months, that grossed, and we was releasing more episodes, and before we knew it, in London and across, I guess, the UK, we started to create such a fan base, really, where each episode was on average about 300k, and for YouTube that was just insane. So we was approached by Big Talk Productions, and they were doing a show called Youngers at the time. They were in pre-production stages, and the writer Levi, he was watching our content, and part of his pitching process, he said, we need to put these 3 characters in this show called Youngers. And so we was approached by Big Talk, we had a meeting, and I guess it was the first time that a YouTube series was taken from the transition from YouTube to TV, really. And that was because we had the audience, we had the 16 to 24 demographic, so they were thinking, how can we just give the show more promo?
Yeah, how can we translate it? And like a big part of it was, we kind of looked at it and said, okay, now that we're at a place where, you know, we've done Youngers, and it got to the point where we had tried to exhaust everything that we could do with the brand and with the characters. And because Youngers was a TV show, but it wasn't our TV show. It wasn't, you know, the Man on the Wall show, which was what we was pitching for and kind of ploughing in for. And so when we got to the point where we was like, okay, let's do a series of Youngers, maybe 2 series of Youngers, and the plan was that we would then get our own TV show off the back of that. So we then neglected our whole audience, and we said, all right, look, we're going to get a TV show. So, okay, it doesn't really matter about not, you know, producing as much online content, because by the time you get a TV show, everyone comes back because everyone loves TV. So that didn't happen. When it got to the point of pitching for Younger season 2, they said, look, we can't pitch Man on the Wall because the shows are so similar. So we had then neglected our audience, and by the time Youngers had finished, it was like, okay, we were just kind of on our Jack Jones. So then we tried to exhaust as much as we could do with the brand, and we said, okay, now we want to start creating new characters, but let's try and get the most out of Man on the Wall. So we did a live show, we went to Hackney Empire, and we basically facilitated taking our online audience and our online format into a live show. So we did a couple of nights at the Hackney Empire, and we sold out 1,500 people. What was great about it was families. It was young kids to their grandparents, to their parents, and, you know, we could facilitate having a show which was on YouTube and then bringing it to the live stage.
And the big thing with that is that we were told in every commission and meeting room that we had, like, we were always told that our concept was too niche, that it didn't appeal to a mainstream audience. And for us, what was so, I think, quite difficult to accept was that if you were achieving 1 million views, that, to me, that's mainstream. To me, that's a wider audience, you know. And it just felt as though we had to do we had to create characters, we had to create a show, we had to get millions of fans and followers in order just to try and pitch a TV show. And it kind of felt like we weren't wanted, we were just tolerated. So
we got to the point where we said, okay, you know what, scrap this. What we're going to do is, if this is the problem, let's not kind of bask in the problem, let's create the solution. So TV won't take us, the networks won't create our shows, so let's just create our own network, and let's basically get to the point where we can create more shows. So at that point, here came the through. And, we said to ourselves, look, what we want to do is now we want to get to a place where not only do we have Man on the Wall, but we have other shows, other characters in which we want to create and have an opportunity to be able to put that on a platform. And we couldn't do that on Man on the Wall because Man on the Wall was a show as opposed to a channel. So we created the Wall of Comedy. And the Wall of Comedy, it stemmed from Man on the Wall. And, we wanted to try and stay true to the source. So we said, okay, let's try and take some of the words out of it. So we took the wall out of Man on the Wall, and we wanted to use Facebook as a predominant platform. And as we all know, Facebook has a wall. So we said this is going to be a Facebook wall of comedy. And then that kind of started to kind of open up into different platforms. We then had Instagram come along, and that picked up, and the likes of Snapchat, and obviously continued with YouTube. So the Wall of Comedy gave us an opportunity to not only work on our own shows, but also start to kind of reach out to other talent. We would see people on Instagram, on Snapchat, and say what they're doing is great. And essentially what we don't want to do is be the people in which, gave the same annoyance to us, to them. So we said, we can see what you're doing, we love it. How can we take your format of what you're doing on Instagram or on Snapchat and basically bring it to the masses and help, give our production quality and our expertise to help take it to the next level?
Essentially, we want to take a risk on that talent that TV don't want to take a risk on, and we understand the process of how we can use social media to build a brand, and then eventually we can create a TV show around that person. But how can we nurture that talent, as opposed to, what we had to do is that we had to spend 5 years of just grafting in order to get an opportunity. How can we work with talent from the beginning stages so they don't have to go through the same problems like we did? So with the Wall of Comedy, essentially, we commission our own shows, we produce that in-house. We now manage talent as well in the space. And we kind of we work across consultancy, production,
live shows and events, our site, in which we want to basically eventually get to the point where we can build out our own Netflix, really and truly. So that when you go to Netflix and you see comedies, documentaries, action, drama, we want to have the wall, and it's comedy, the Wall of Comedy, the Wall of Music, the Wall of everything else. Hugh.
So the harvest, what we're moving into now is that we understand that our blueprint for success is working. So how can we expand that and just tap into different industries, really, because there's still so much more talent in other areas that have been affected in the same way that we did. So the Wall of Sport, the Wall of Music, talent, fitness, food, inspiration are just the few platforms that we're going to reach into first.
Yeah, and the aim will be in the same thing, and the same way we've done what we've done with the Wall of Comedy is like to do the same thing with the Wall of Music. So with Wall of Music, we're looking into trying to create our own record label and team up with a major label to be able to develop in the same way we develop comedy acts, to develop music artists in which we can develop them on a ground level. We don't really care if they've got the following, and labels will say, oh, that person, they're not very good, but they've got a massive following. At one point, we had Universal come to us, and with our comedy parodies, they wanted to sign Man on the Wall, and we're like, you guys really just follow the numbers. And we said, we don't want to do that. We want to be in a place where we can, select the talent specifically and help them to give them an audience to be able to generate an opportunity for them to kind of push forward. So that's what we're going to do with the Wall of Music, and then we have the Wall of Talent, Fitness, Food, and just try and build out all of these platforms to be able to bring us into our harvest.
And now it's changing the climate in terms of like what brands are investing their money into, and it still isn't there yet, but we really believe that things like, for that market group that we're talking about, like I wouldn't necessarily pick up a magazine to check up on my favorite artist. Like I would go on my Instagram account to check what, I don't know, Kevin Hart just said, or whoever. So we believe in the fact that, one, the brand space are going to come to companies like ourselves, create content, and also we feel like we've created a social science. We believe, like, when there's a comedian called Michael Dapper who's done a character called Big Shaq, and before the success of Big Shaq, we was actually working with Michael on his YouTube series Swill, and we would take his content, we'll package that content up, create the captions, and release that onto our audience of 5 million people. And in those beginning stages, you started to see that he was growing in terms of he was nurturing. Yeah. But it felt like what we do in terms of social media, like that's the underground, that's the buzz that, you know, before someone is commercial, that's where people define cool. You know, if you've got the underground buzz, and we have the platforms to do that ourselves, and another platform called I'm Just Bait. We sort of define what's cool, and that's there's power in that.
Yeah, it's now got to the point where it's now youth culture. You know, before it was all urban, and urban was niche, and they would say, you know, people can't relate to Man on the Wall, but we're people. Like, people relate to Finding Nemo, and that's a fish. So we got to the point where it was like, how can you say that you can't relate to real characters because you're not from that area when no one lives in the sea? So we want to kind of go on to building out, and not just online, but taking that and really pushing it forward. Q. And, you know, behind everything in which we've been doing as, you know, building our companies, we've still been continuing our journey as actors alongside building our company, and now we're really kind of getting to the point where essentially we just want to be as successful as we can be in all of the fields in which we hit, whether it's across the media and our companies, whether it is acting, and now trying to finally surface that, and, you know, being given the opportunity to be able to lead in 2 amazing projects. Myself, the new Purge film, which is the prequel, so it's the 4th Purge movie, but it's the first story, and Percy landing the lead role in a new Netflix original called The Innocents, which is going to be an amazing project. The trailer's out on YouTube, check it out. And both projects hit in the summer, and the aim is just to kind of keep going on leaps and bounds, and, you know, building out what we've built.
And I guess what we're saying is that we started off with a small idea, a USP, a why, and you build up from that why. You know, you follow your purpose. Like, we know that the Wall of Comedy and anything we create is bigger than ourselves individually. You know, we're doing this because there's a movement there, there's an energy, and the people need that. And now we find ourselves in a place where we're able to create 360 companies. You know, we're now dealing with brands, but no longer just creating content for them. We're doing the ideation process, the creation and distribution, and that's something that the world hasn't seen before. You know, most companies are either a creative agency and all they do in-house is just the content, maybe the strategy, but we have the audience as well. So we're adapting to the climate now, and we're changing, and hopefully, you know, we'll just keep growing and use the leverage of our individual careers as well to affect our company success as well.
Thank you. So what we did is we got to a place where we wanted to start creating movies, essentially, and, you know, not only waiting for an opportunity to be cast to star in movies, but also get behind our own projects to be able to make sure that it happens without relying on anyone else. So we had a comedian called Kojo come to us, and he had a script in which he done about 6 years ago. And at the time, myself, Percy, and Dee, we were doing a project with Film London where we pitched for money to create a feature, and our director had dropped out in the last minute, which meant that we couldn't go forward with the project because it was a director-led scheme. So during that time, they said, okay, look, just do a short film for now, and then next year come back with a new director, and we'll push it, and we can see what happened. And then Kojo came along, and he said, look, I've got this film, I can't, you know, play these characters anymore, I'm too old, and you guys would be a perfect fit. And the funder that he had basically last minute just went kaput off the face of the earth. And then we said, okay, look, this project can be pushed forward, like, let's come on board and let's co-produce it. So we took, you know, our company, and we said, look, let's get some of our editors behind it, let's get our sound guys.
A big thing I want to interject there is because we knew that if we created Man on the Wall and took that to TV, and all we applied was the same principles of just hard work and just growing it out, we knew that we could do the same thing with the film market as well. Sorry.
So what we done was we used a platform to be able to try and push our film. So we co-produced the movie. We you know, used the platform to do a fundraising campaign to be able to inject more money into the campaign, to then get to the point where we raised X amount, to then get a private investors to then match what we did, to the point where we ended up getting around 250K to make our film. And then we used our platform to be able to package elements of the film and push it out so that we could sell DVDs. And off the back of that, we wanted to get it into, you know, Sky Digital and iTunes and Amazon, but in order to do that, we had to have some kind of cinematic release. So again, we said, okay, well, let's do it. No cinemas will let us in, but there was an opportunity called Our Screen, which is a company in which allow you to have independent screens, and if you can sell a certain amount of tickets within those screens, then that screening goes live. So we sold advanced tickets in around 50 screens across the country, and all of those screens went live, and we sold out 50 screens across the country to allow us to then say, okay, cool, now we can get a digital distribution release. And so we then went to Sky and then packaged it and put it out on there. And then we went to Netflix and said, can you guys license this? We thought it was just going to be UK, but they ended up pushing it to Netflix worldwide in the US as well, and then it managed to trend. So we want to kind of keep imitating that same model and now take what we can do from our online space and just have everything, have one hand wash another, you know what I mean? And just kind of keep pushing that forward.
Is there everything?
Yeah. And then last but not least, now we just want to keep on, you know, using what we've done and the knowledge and the experience in which we've kind of gone through to help inspire the next generation. And so we had conversations with BBC Radio 1 to basically get to a point where we could do a podcast. So we listened to we listened to loads of podcasts, but one specifically called How I Built This, which is an entrepreneur's podcast. If you haven't heard about it, you should go check it out. And it's basically a conversation with all of the biggest entrepreneurs in the world, you know, from the Richard Bransons to the guy who created Airbnb to the guy who even created the Power Rangers theme song. And he basically goes through the journey of how they got to where they are and how they built their company. So we said, look, there's so much happening in the UK, especially with young entrepreneurs and people who are building and doing the same thing that we're doing, and we'd love to expose that, share those stories to inspire the next generation, and also do it with a comedy twist. So we got a commissioned podcast called How I Got Here, which is our version of How I Built This, which myself and Percy will be interviewing some of our friends who are entrepreneurs, or just, you know, people we respect in the space who are building industries and building companies to kind of take things to the next level. And the aim is that we will just keep on building, and, you know, nobody lives forever. So the aim is to create something that will, and we will. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, now that our panellists have introduced themselves, so you've got to see some examples of the work and such, I thought it would be nice to kind of open up to the audience, basically. So, yeah, has anyone got any questions that they'd like to ask to anyone on the panel? Don't be shy. Yeah.
How do you earn revenue from having Facebook, raw comedy on Facebook? How does that work?
So there's a few ways. So originally we were part of a monetization program, which is a beta program called Suggested Video, where we would be able to monetize our views on Facebook. So every time a video would hit the news feed and you'd see it appear on your news feed, whatever views were generated via the news feed, we would then be able to monetize. And that was great for us, and that really helped us to build out our business. And then it got to a point where summer last year, they then closed that down because Facebook are trying to work out exactly how to monetize. And so they started something called mid-roll, which was, you know, it was like maybe 6 or 7 times the revenue, which was Suggested Video, but that was only available in the US. So it got to the point where we had basically lost our main revenue source, and we had to completely shift our business model to branded projects and brand deals. So being able to use the platform and our in-house production team and consultancy to work on branded briefs to be able to produce original content for those brands. And that's the kind of main source of how we now monetize. But fingers crossed, you know, Facebook bring that back to the US, to the UK, and mid-rolls are built out as well. But just kind of general advertisements, so across our website, monetizing our views on our website, and then we have our different subsidiaries, so like having an opportunity for people to advertise on, even if it's their content, on the Wall of Music, or, you know, our talent company. So working with our talent, shout out Vashti, our talent manager, in which basically puts our talent in front of people in which want to use their services, and then we monetize because they book jobs and just kind of keep building out.
So I know there was a question at the back as well.
Hi, sorry, I don't know if anyone can hear me. You guys all seem really confident, and one question I would like to ask is, how did you build that inner confidence in order to do this in an industry where there's no promises and the income can be irregular? So how did you guys build up your inner confidence in order to be like, this is what I'm going to do?
It's a great question.
Can I answer that one?
Yeah. Yeah, you can all have a go.
Yeah. Honestly, it's probably the toughest thing I've ever done in terms of going into the industry. I actually went to uni to do construction management, and then about 2 years, 2 years in, dropped out to pick up entertainment technology. But in that gap where I dropped out, I taught myself photography. And then once I went from photography into my next course, into my next year of entertainment technology, again, I had already learned almost, because I was a YouTuber, in terms of like I learned everything from YouTube. So it was like, after a while, I wasn't learning anything at uni, so I dropped out and I got a internship at an MTV production company. From there, moved on to Lemonade Money, which is a production company these guys know really, really well. They're just below them, actually. And honestly, once you see a glass ceiling, you kind of want to go at it alone. That's the scary part, is when you actually want to go and do something on your own. I think it's learning how to take the good with the bad. It's kind of like people need to almost believe in you or trust in you in some capacity, and in order for them to do that, you need to kind of get knocked back and fail at it and then go again, get knocked back and fail at it and then go again. But then it's like through that you kind of get faith in yourself, and you keep practicing and practicing and practicing and practicing, and then I think your confidence just kind of grows with that, you know. And then what you actually find out is that you have more information than they do, because they kind of need you. They kind of need you in order to build their brand, because you come from a generation that has the answers that they need. Does that make sense? So it's like, I think once you realize that you kind of have the answers and the skills and you can learn it all by yourself, then I think that kind of helps a lot.
Anything to add?
No, yeah, I think, like, sort of going off what you said, sort of the confidence for me came from my peer group and sort of those who I surround myself with. Again, as Tando said, you get knocked back, but I think at the end of the day, those who are sort of you're showing your content to, with me, with my photography, you got to shout about yourself, I think, especially in like this industry. You've got to sort of, even if you don't feel it, like even if you don't, for example, with my photography, sometimes I think, oh, that photo's, it's not my best, but then someone else comes in and says that's a great photo, and you're like, oh, maybe it is actually sort of all right. It's just that sort of inner confidence. Yeah, you've got to, again, I think the more jobs you get, you've just got to really put yourself in sort of out of your comfort zone. For me, again, because I'm sort of self-taught, like with the Fashion Week I was on about earlier, I had no idea like where I'm meant to stand or who I'm meant to talk to, or should I be taking a photo of him or her. You've just got to sort of believe in yourself, and at the end of the day, you make mistakes to learn from. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. I know it's so sort of cliche, but it's so true. And yeah, if you do sort of all of that, your confidence builds, and like you feel it yourself, and yeah, just keep at it, keep working hard, and yeah, it'll come, and you'll know it as well because you feel it, and you sort of reach out for those bigger jobs. And for me personally, I met a photographer who I've looked up to for quite a while. He's quite sort of established in the events industry, and yeah, I just messaged him like 2 weeks ago on Instagram. I was like, mate, I love your work. I'd love to just meet up with you and have a chat, like pick his brains a bit. And yeah, it went awesome. And now he's sort of a friend and another contact, and I'm on his radar, he's on mine. So yeah, just don't be afraid to sort of make those sort of leaps into the unknown, because it always pays off.
I think to add to that as well is that when we're talking about the Wall of Comedy, and we're talking to a lot of different people who might not understand our brand and they don't know who we are, but what gives me the confidence is that I'm not pretending, man. Like how can I describe it? I feel so confident about this. It's like I just believe in it so much. Like it just, you know, and that's because we put in like the sort of 10,000 hours into it. Like we've just like had to like dissect it and break it down and go through the failures that you've just said as well, just to know that it works as well. So when I'm selling it to someone or I'm talking about the platform, like I don't hesitate with it, because we've gone through that journey and that process to know that it does so well. And I think even being at the sort of the master at your craft, you know, watching the guys here, like, you know, I'm sure that they've put in that time, and now like when they're on the shoot, they can be confident to step up to whatever obstacle or challenge, because they've mastered that craft. Whether it's my acting career as well, where if I'm on, because of all the other jobs I've done in the past and all the training I've done and the rehearsals and that preparation, that allows me to have the confidence to know that I'm prepared for it. Like I can't, you know.
Yeah, I kind of put it down to two things. Like there's like having your why. Like why do you do what it is that you want to do? Because essentially people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And you need to understand why you want to do something or why you are doing it, because that's what gives you the confidence to be able to know that, okay, whatever it is, the reason why I'm pushing this is because this is what it is, you know. And once you get to that point, you kind of don't really care what anyone really says. You know, you have people, and don't be under no illusion, people will come and they'll knock you down and knock you down and knock you down. But when you have your why and you understand why you're doing something, it doesn't really matter, because you just have to do it. And you kind of have to put yourself in a mindset where you don't have a choice. Like if I don't do this, I don't do anything. And so when you put yourself in that category, you kind of say to yourself, okay, well, like that's it, isn't it? And you know, it's all about the journey. Like the journey, people focus so much on the destination and getting to where they want to get to. I want to be successful. I want to be successful. Yes, you want to be successful, but you don't want to be successful now. Because otherwise, if everyone could be successful at a click of a finger, what's the point? What's the point of life? What's the point of, you know, doing all of these things if you're just going to get it straight away? You want to have that journey. You want to have those knockbacks and all of that, because that's what builds you. And that's what gives you the understanding and the knowledge of what you can then share and impart in other people, because you've had that journey.
And sorry, lastly, surround yourself with positive people as well. Look around you. Look around you. Like, he's my best friend, my business partner, but he's a reflection of me. Like, down to his principles of as a person, his character. Like that all of that stems from like why we're so passionate, why we have confidence, and we have that belief system. If I say something negative, he's there to pick me up. We're like two pillars that if one falls, the other one is holding the other.
Oh, P, what if we don't get this opportunity? Shut up. Of course we get this opportunity. You know what I mean? And you need that. Otherwise, if someone feeds that doubt, it's just going to go.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. I think I was going to say your confidence doesn't necessarily have to be outward facing. It can be through your work, or it can be through your passions. So I think in terms of ensuring that, you know, like the guys are saying, like have a purpose, have a passion, and that will shine through. You don't have to be the most confident person in the world to get that message across. But if you believe in something, show that through your art, show that through your work, and essentially challenge people. You know, like Tando was saying, if he hadn't have, you know, gone to that client and said, do you want me to make this film? I'll do it all for you because I believe in this and I'm interested in it, I'm passionate about it, then that piece of work wouldn't have come about. So be confident in your approach in terms of, if you see something that you don't quite click with, if a brand's doing something that you think, I can do that better, tell them, because they want to hear from you, and you don't have to be confident, you just have to push what you believe in and stand up for what you believe in, and the output will be something like that piece of work, which, you know, was incredible. So
thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Mark here from Real Youth. I'm a big fan of failure, and I'm wondering if each of you could just quickly share a specific important failure.
That's a good question.
I mean, recently I was on a shoot and my camera kind of broke. That wasn't the one. I think, like, for me personally, like, making sure I've got backup equipment was like a failure recently. But I'll have another think and see if I can think of a more sort of established idea. But for me, yeah, preparation, like expecting the worst.
For me, I think it was so last year. Beginning of last year, I did a Sky Atlantic documentary, and I was directing it, and then my company actually ended up we ended up producing part of it as well. It was really good. Everything was going really well. We had like amazing rollouts. It was off the back of Gorilla, the series, and towards the end of the project. And I don't know, because I worked with Latimer as well.
I was going to say, I know
with
this
this
one well.
So they don't really know this. But we screened it. It was like a big screening, and everyone came down, like John Ridley and Babby C. So everyone came down. It was awesome. And towards the end, I think we as a group started to get a bit complacent. It was doing so well. Everyone was like, "Oh my God, I love the documentary," especially after the screening. It was just like everything was a lot, and we're getting some really good feedback. And then I think we waited until the last 2 days to actually export it as a project. And because we did that, if we could have exported it a week before, and because we waited until the last 2 days, we ran into loads of trouble in the edit, and our edit broke down. It was like literally about like a 20 grand edit, broke down, and we were stuck. Didn't know what to do. We were all running around, trying to export on a laptop and trying to export on this, that, and the other. It was a mess. And I think we ended up actually delivering like a couple of hours late, and that was probably the worst. Honestly, I know it might sound small, but for me, I'm a bit perfectionist. And just because we were a couple of hours late, I think that day felt like my life was ruined. Felt like the worst experience I've ever felt, because people were like, where is it, where is it? People at Sky are like calling me, oh, where is it, where is it? And I'm just losing it. I think that was the turning point in terms of making sure that I'm always prepared like a scout, you know? And I think making sure that, especially towards the end of a project, just because you smashed it, it doesn't mean you just kind of it doesn't mean you step off the gas. Like if you're running a 100-meter race, you don't step off the gas at the end. Like if anything, you're supposed to power through. That's how you get across the line. So it's like, I think that was my, probably to date, my biggest failure was just being late for that, because it was supposed to be this big thing. It ended up not being too much of a big deal for them, but for me and like my people, it was a massive deal for us, and it'll never happen again.
I don't really think that anyone really fails, like in the true sense of the word. I get that we have like knockbacks and stuff, and so for me, you know, in the job that I do at Latimer, you know, there will be times where we might win pitches, and that's great, and we'll get to work on those projects with clients, but they are more few and far between than the ones we lose. Like my lose list is huge, my win list not that big, but I don't let that lose list stop me from moving on and you know, continuing to pitch to brands and do that job, because I just think, like you were saying, it's you can't have success like that. If you have success like that, what are you going to do? What are you going to get up and do every day? So I think don't let the word or the fear of like failure be something that holds you back. Just accept it. It is what it is. You won't win them all. You won't have enough hours in the day to work on 100 clients. You'll only have the capacity to work on 5 or 10 or whatever. So put everything into that, and don't let those, you know, when I lose a pitch, I just go, okay, on to the next. I just don't dwell on it. I can learn from maybe, you know, what I might have done better, or, you know, channel it in and look at it and go, okay, maybe if we've done it like this, or we've done that. So take the loss, learn from it, and then apply it channel it into what you want to do next, and don't let it hold you back too much.
Boy, yeah, for us, we fail every day, to be honest. But we like to use a term of like, we fail forward, you know, like you look at a baby, and you know, when a baby first starts to learn how to walk, in order to learn how to walk and eventually get to that point where they are successful at doing that, they have to crawl, and then they have to stand up, and then take 2 steps, and they drop back down, stand up, 4 steps. Eventually they get to the point where they can walk. So in terms of, you could look at it and say, every time that child gets up and tries to walk and doesn't achieve that they're failing. But essentially that's part of the process in order to be able to achieve. And I'd say like one of our biggest points were when we neglected our online audience, and we kind of stepped away and we said, look, yes, we're going to be on TV now, so we don't have to focus on that. Yeah, we'll focus on all of that online stuff when it comes back to, you know, online, and essentially putting our fate in someone else's hands. And that's something that we never do. And that was the first time in which we said, okay, cool, this opportunity's coming, let's do it, because it's all going to be all right, because we're going to be on TV.
Like, yeah, to add to that, I think every time I didn't listen to my instinct, every time I didn't listen to what we wanted to do, your authentic truth kind of thing. Because even what we do as well, like we're doing it for a purpose or a passion. So anytime we work with a brand and it's not authentic, that's the stuff I look back on. I don't care what the numbers are, I don't care about that. I just feel like I didn't fulfill my purpose with that project, and I feel like I failed.
Yeah. Because then you just look at it like you just did it for the money.
You sold out. Sold out.
Okay, I think, have we got time for one more? Just one?
Not really.
Okay.
I'm a generous soul, so I'll have one.
Thank you.
Cheers. Just a question for the Wall of Comedy guys. It's like a 2-part question. Firstly, I'm interested. How many people have you got working for you guys now? Like, how big has the company you've established? And secondly, how do you balance being creatives and business people, where you've got to act and there's a lot that goes into that, and you've got to run a company, there's a lot that goes into that, so I'm just interested how you do that.
Yeah. We don't know the answer. Yeah, sorry. No, you go.
In our team we have around about 15 people, including ourselves, and then we have some interns in which work in different areas across our production or social or whatever areas in which we need help in. In terms of balancing, you kind of just do it. Like, you kind of, like, there's no real thing, and we even beat ourselves up about things, because for the first time just last year gone, when Percy was filming his series and I was doing my film, we were both out of the country at the same period of time for a good 4 months. And that was a kind of real test to see, okay, does this thing work without us? Can it still function? Can it still move forward? And that's when you kind of look at it and say, well, have you built a business? Because a business is only something in which runs when you're not there.
Yeah, and I know she'll hate me for doing this, but Vashti, just over there, just wait, put your hand up, Vash. It's important to just like give the love back to the people that help run this thing. It's not just us, it's our family, and that's how I look at it. And like Javan said, there's probably a core team of say about 10 people, but if it's not for them and what they do for us, they allow us to just take away a lot of the stress, and we can just focus on the creative. But yeah, like Javan said, it's a balancing act, man, and we're still trying to work out the answer to it.
We're trying to solve that problem now.
But we just know how to run, man. We run 1,000 miles per hour, and until we look at it as like we're going to go and hunt and bring food back for the family type of thing, you know, and we just got to keep doing what we've got to do until you know, we can push the button on more resource.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Is that right? Sorry, I'll just take 2 seconds. I think it's I think the main thing is like a balancing act. So, but don't think that you can't do both. So you can be a creative and run a business at the same time, but the biggest thing you have to do is learn how to delegate.
Yes.
Literally, that's like the biggest. It's like you have to trust someone else with your dream, just to be like, you have to find whoever it is that you trust. And once you do, just be like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And don't micromanage, don't do any of that, because what ends up happening is this ends up losing and this ends up losing as well.
Yeah.
But if you have to hand something over and be like, you need to take care of this for a while. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, we've got a team in New York, Toronto, and LA, and I have to step away. I can't go over there all the time. We've got so much going on here. I have to give it to someone and be like, can you please make sure that we're doing all right? And I'll check in and do whatever I've got to do. But the biggest thing is trusting someone else and giving them what they deserve to.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? You can't just be like, okay, so do this work or do whatever this is, and then you reap all the benefits. You have to like recognize that they've done a lot for your dream, and your dream becomes theirs, and then you kind of grow together. Do you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden, that's how you end up building an empire, because everyone believes in the same thing.
Yeah.
And you all grow as a. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think delegation and trusting in your people is like, it can go so far. You can do anything that way.
Amazing. Well, thank you all for joining us on the panel today. I hope you guys have got some key kind of things to take back and, you know, utilise within your own careers. And yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys about for the day.
Cool.